We were told that if somebody is too weak to hike, the guides will basically carry you. It was this kind of trip. I had no idea. And when the silverback charges you, just drop to your hands. And I was like, Silverback charges you? Where was that at the beginning of the story? My dad has a 16 millimeter film camera, and he's filming, and the gorilla charges. So when I was 19, I had the chance to go to Africa. It was a once-in-a-lifetime trip. My mom had gotten remarried, and Andy, my stepfather, instead of taking a honeymoon, he agreed to take my mom and we 3 kids to Africa for a month. It was a premium trip, involved hot air ballooning and all sorts of things. It was a luxurious safari, so we were scared and excited at the same time. And when we got there, some things happened that I wasn't expecting. Being in Africa for a month, our trip was to Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda. From the highlights of spending New Year's at the casino in Mombasa and winning the lottery there, to hiking up in Rwanda to see the mountain gorillas. This was pre-Rwanda slaughter, so we were there before that time. That's what, 36 years ago. The stories that I remember were the ones that stood out. We were traveling with 2 other families. One family was a very wealthy, I don't know those guys, investment banker. And he was also he was hyper type A. He was a submarine captain in the military, and man, he pushed his daughters. I don't know if they came out right or not, but he used to push them. On our way to Rwanda, the tour included, we were all put in these buses. They're basically a Volkswagen bus, and we got to drive through these mountainsides. It was really beautiful, but we'd drive through the towns, and for me, it was a new thing. You know, you seeing the cows getting cut up on the side of the road, and it's the market. And long story short is we got to the base of this mountain, and we were told to bring an extra set of clothes. The clothing that you leave behind after the hike is the tip to the guides. And they said, you're never sure if you're going to see the gorillas or not, but you hike all day, and if the gorillas are willing to say hello to you, then that's what you get. Other days you strike out. The family that went the day before us, they didn't get to see gorillas, and they were really disappointed because I hiked for like 8 or 10 hours and they kept going up the mountain. The way they organize it was pretty swank. Wear boots, wear long pants and long sleeve shirts, and if you want, bring some gloves because the nettles are an irritant. They're kind of like poison ivy thorns. However, we were told that if somebody is too weak to hike, the guides will basically carry you. It was this kind of trip. I had no idea. And although we kind of laughed at that idea, after a few hours of hiking, I looked at I thought, this is why, my stepdad had a motorcycle accident, he had a bad ankle. So I was just like, God, they're going to need to carry this guy, But instead, they carried all of our lunches. They had these big old-fashioned steel coolers, and they were loaded with ice, and they used to carry these on their head, and they had a little wreath of padding. The guys had legs like a giant, and they were hiking these mountains in penny loafers. I was just like, no socks, just penny loafers. I was like, oh my God. The type A submarine captain guy, he was a beefy guy. He said, let me try to carry that cooler. And they're like, really? He carried the cooler for a little bit, and his neck was wrecked the whole rest of the trip. It was just a stupid move. I mean, what these guys were capable of versus some guy thinking he could, do it. But anyways, we hiked up. The guides have a relationship with the gorillas, and we got up there, and he said, they're right up here. And now before we get closer, here's what you need to be reminded of. When you see the gorillas, don't smile. That's aggressive, to show the teeth. And when the silverback charges you, just drop to your hands. And I was like, Silverback charges you? Where was that at the beginning of the story? And he said, no, it doesn't always charge, but sometimes he will, and it's no big deal. He's just, dominance. And when we got up there, he had to spend a lot of time. He was under there crawling under the trees, kind of cooing with the gorillas, calming them down. They were upset about something. He's like, I don't know if we're gonna get close to them today. Let me see how this goes. So after about 30 or 40 minutes, he's like, okay, we can approach. I don't know how he decides this. And it's getting later in the day. We don't want to be stuck on the mountain at night. It was hard enough during the day. And we come up closer, and it was fantastic. I mean, the gorillas were just, their eyes were so alive. It was unlike anything. And the big ones, their heads were like huge. You hear huge heads, but this was like probably even bigger than this. When we got up there, my dad has a 16 millimeter film camera, and he's filming, and the gorilla charges, and he's just standing filming, and we all drop, and we're like, Andy, and we pull him down. And the gorilla, I saw him, came at us in that beautiful run, and he just, with one sweep of the hand, he swept up and he grabbed this tree. Now, it was kind of looked like he was grabbing a little bush, and he just winged it at us. But when it landed by us, I'm like, I've tried to cut trees down like that with it's a lot of work. So just the power was remarkable. We were all feeling very satisfied with the trip and exhausted, and we came down, and there's a few visuals I have, is that gorilla charging, the man cooing to try to calm them down. I'm like, wow, they really have the relationship. And also, before we started the hike, the sunrise coming up behind this mountain was just fantastic. And when we got down, we're all changing in the car, and the whole group of like kids and everybody's watching us change, because they're like, what gets left behind today? And it was so amazing to see such financial despair in one regard and such global wealth on the mountain. Like, we traveled around the world to come see what they have in their backyard, and all they are able to really care about is that we actually can leave a pair of jeans behind, because they had no access to it. It was such a flip-flop of two worlds, but that was beautiful. I don't even remember the ride home. I think we were unconscious. Shortly after that, they stopped giving access because Rwanda went into a terrible genocide story. Just in time for us and the gorilla, but a terrible time for the rest of the country.
Can you explain to me, what do you mean when you say gorilla charging?
So to establish dominance, the silverback, which is the dominant male, he came from the forest and rushed right at us. And you didn't know if he was going to stop or not, like if he was coming to attack you or just coming to establish dominance. And the gorillas were as close as to you and me this way, and the silverbacks kind of hung back maybe 40 or 50 feet. But when they run, 40 or 50 feet is like this, and it's like a blink. It's like they're there, they're fast.
Is that safe at all?
We were told it was safe, and we were told that you can't reach out to them, but the gorillas are familiar with the humans because this is a part of the reoccurring thing that they have going on. So we felt that we were in familiar territory.
Would you go on another safari now?
No, I don't think so. It was amazing, but that trip required a lot of motion. Every 2 days we were somewhere else. Now, this particular trip allowed for, we didn't have to drive from place to place. Like, I remember somewhere in Tanzania, there was like a big dump truck, and it was full of people, but they were tourists. They were all backpackers. And so they would travel from one place to the other in the back of this dump truck. We got in a plane and flew to the next place in these private props. So it was a different level of tour, apparently. And our guide, Andrew, I don't know why I remember his name, he always had this backpack with him, and it was a backpack full of money. He bribed our way across all these places. That's why it was so smooth. But in Africa, I had two other experiences. I almost died twice. Once was on a plane, one of those luxury planes, and once was from alcohol poisoning.